My mama told me, like, don't be cattle. I've interpreted that into the Queen's mindset just because I think that people who aren't raised in the country might have a negative view of me calling women cattle. I have thought about, like, if you're kind of in this place where you're in the herd and you know you don't want to be in the herd, like, how do you get out of the herd? How do you go from being a princess to a queen if you know you're kind of in the princess mindset and you want to grow into a queen's mindset? So I came up with 5 things. So the first one is to identify the patterns and opt in or opt out on purpose. So part of being a part of the herd is that you're just going along to get along. Like, that's what Mama said that you shouldn't be. You shouldn't just go along to get along, because then you're going to follow the ass in front of you all the way to the hamburger factory. And so, a princess is just kind of doing it because other people want them to. They're not necessarily acting intentionally because they choose to do whatever the thing is. So I think that the first step to transitioning from a princess mindset to a queen's mindset is to identify the patterns that you're opting in or opting out of, so then you know what the laws are that you're operating under. The second thing would then be to decide if you're optimizing for approval or are you optimizing for peace. So if you're optimizing for approval, you are then seeking out other people external to you and getting them to approve of what you're doing. That is a princess mindset. If you are optimizing for peace, you are seeking out the approval of somebody else and having that optimization just to keep the peace. Or are you choosing deliberate actions regardless of approval or peace? In other words, are you choosing that for yourself? That's also the difference between harmony and strategic friction. In order to go away from the herd, in order to become the queen, you may have to choose some strategic friction. And it may cause some disharmony. But you have to choose that to trailblaze your own path. You have to also quit asking, like, what do they like? What do they care about? What will keep the peace? What will keep the harmony? And instead, you have to ask yourself, what matters to me? And then move to that. That's what I call my north. Like, decide what your north is and move to your north, even if it causes friction, even if it causes disharmony. The third one is that you have to separate being kind from being compliant. And there's a lot right now being talked about the difference between being nice and being kind, but I call it being compliant versus being kind. Kindness is a value. Like, you can choose to be kind. You can choose to acknowledge the homeless person on the street corner because they are human. But it doesn't mean that you have to be compliant and have peer pressure to necessarily give money to the homeless person because you don't necessarily believe that they ought to be begging on the street corner. There's a difference in those two things. And that doesn't make you disrespectful to the homeless person. You can acknowledge they're human, but also acknowledge there's a better system for dealing with the homeless population. You can be respectful, you can be clear with your value system, but you can still maintain your boundary. Elena Cardone explained this to me. The way that I understood it was that her value system was to save the traditional family. My value system was to support women who are transitioning in life through maybe no fault of their own. Other people's value system may be to save the whales. And what Elena said to me was, saving the whales is a very laudable goal. It's just not her goal. Her goal is the traditional family unit. So she's going to save the family while somebody else saves the whales, and then everybody is going to do their thing, and the whales are going to get saved, and the family's going to get saved, and everybody's going to do their part. So are you doing it for performance or for position? The fourth one is to build your independent system of validation. And that is contradicted to looking outside yourself for validation. So are you seeking the approval of other people as your validation system? Are you seeking for other people to tell you that you did a good job? Or are you looking at yourself saying, I did a good job on that, or I could have done better, like doing your own deep dive analysis of whatever it is, the networking event, or whatever your mission is, and giving yourself that controlled internal validation. This is where I was telling you that I keep my master list of successes, and then I also kind of do my own self-evaluation anytime that I'm trying to accomplish a mission, so that I can give my own internal validation instead of seeking the validation of others. And the fifth one is practice divergence. I think that divergence is a skill that has to be learned. That is, you are in the comfort zone of the herd, and it is discomfort to go outside the herd. That is this practice of divergence. So practice it in little ways, walking outside of the comfort zone of the herd in small ways before you just go, as we'd say in the country, hog wild and do something super crazy. Think differently than the herd in small ways before you think differently in a big way. Cody Sanchez calls this contrarian thinking. And I love that term, contrarian thinking, because it just makes you think like critical thinking skills of how the herd is thinking, and then dig a little deeper on what they're thinking and why. Just ask why. I'm a big proponent of asking why 5 levels deep on whatever the topic is. It may be, investment policy for a family. It may be divorces and why, 50-year-old women file more divorces. Like, it may be how to handle a networking event. But whatever the common thought process is, maybe it's politics, ask why. In politics, in business, a lot of times the answer is going to be follow the money. But you need to ask why and go 5 levels deep on the why, because you're going to find some divergence in thought process by critical thinking skills. And that practicing divergent thinking is where you can come up with the way that you're going to start separating yourself from the herd in Mama's saying of don't be cattle, and the going along to getting along versus the discomfort of blazing the trail. So when you're developing your mindset, what I call the queen's mindset instead of the cattle mindset, the queen's mindset of not being a princess and starting to get your power as a queen, sometimes queens have to have a divergent mindset and contrarian thinking, as Cody Sanchez would say it. So that would be my 5 ways of starting to develop your queen's mindset and diverting from the comfort of the cattle herd.